So one of the easiest ways to set up your calorie intake for when you're starting a diet is to use something online called a TDEE calculator. It stands for Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator, and all of this is a simple website. There's usually hundreds of them that is going to calculate for you based on a little bit of information what your total calorie intake should be per day to maintain your current weight. Now, the reason this is important is because when you are setting up a diet, whether you want to lose weight or gain weight, you need to know what your starting baseline is so that you can then plus or minus a certain amount of calories to reach your goal across a set period of time. Usually it's a 12-week period as a minimum to kind of see any changes, whether it's fat loss or muscle gain. So these TDE calculators are very important, and it's something you should Google to begin with. So go online, search TDEE calculator, and then pick the one at the top of the list. They're all basically the same, and they're going to ask you for a few bits of information. So things like age, height, gender, activity level, weight, and sometimes, usually optional if I'm honest, but sometimes body fat percentage. So just on the body fat percentage, if you know it, great, put it in. But unless you've had your body fat tested fairly recently using calipers or using a DEXA scan or with an exercise professional, I'll probably advise you leave that section blank because it's quite hard to estimate your body fat percentage anyway. Even harder when you don't have any assistance to do it. And what we don't want to do is get that gauge wrong. So I would just leave that blank if I was you. So obviously, if you want to get your weight, I would suggest you buy scales or use your scales and you hop on it maybe between 1 and 5 days in a row. Just after you've woken up, don't eat or drink anything, just go to the loo, hop on the scales, make a note of the weight every single day, and then take an average that can account for any fluctuations across the week, and then use that as your number. Now, often these calculators will require you to put it into pounds, but if you're measuring yourself in stone and kilos, that's also fine. Just translate it into pounds by going online and searching for a calculator that translates for whatever measurement you're taking into pounds, because you're going to need that for when we look at the diet and what makes it up in terms of macronutrients. So once you've done that, the main part of these calculators and the thing that's going to impact your daily intake of calories the most is going to be the section that asks your activity level across the week. So you'll have a lightly active, moderately active, heavily active, usually maybe a few more than that, but essentially that's the sliding scale. And lightly active starts with 1 to 2 times a week, and moderately active is usually 3 to 4, heavily active is 5 or more. What you'll also need to take into account are things like training intensity when you go to the gym. So if you go to the gym 3 times a week, but you're not training particularly intensely and you work in an office all day, then that still would put you in that lightly active category. If you're training hard 3 times a week and you have a job that's a little bit more active, then you're in the moderately active section. Or if you cycle to work every day on top of going to the gym and you are working behind a desk, again, moderately active. If you have a very physically taxing job, then I would also consider how you're training in the gym, but likely you're going to be at the higher end of the spectrum when it comes to being active. So you'll be at the heavier end of activity across the week. So if you're training a couple of times a week and you're also working on a building site, for instance, 5 days a week, then you would be at the highly active end of that spectrum. Now, what's going to happen when you put all that detail in, it's going to kick out a calorie number that it estimates you should eat, roughly speaking, to maintain your current body weight. Now, most people watching this video will probably want to lose a bit of weight. Usually the client base we have, that's their primary goal: fitness, health, lifestyle, but also a little bit of weight loss. And this is what this video is geared towards. So what you would do when you've got that number, that baseline number, you're going to take between 10 and 20% of that number off. So hypothetically, we're working with 2,000 calories a day for your maintenance. We're going to take 10% off. So we're going to take 200 calories off. It's leaving us 1,800 calories because we want to have a slow deficit. So we're going to reduce 200 calories a day across a prolonged period of time to lose some weight slowly. Bear in mind, anything you achieve slowly normally is easier to maintain than anything that you've achieved over a shorter period of time. So rapid weight loss with a 1,000 calorie deficit, whilst will work across 4, 5, 6 weeks, it will also have a bit of a bounce back effect. So I would advise that you approach these things with a bit of patience. Choose a realistic deficit so you can monitor your hunger, your cravings, and things like that. It's not going to affect your sleep. It's not going to impact your training energy, and it's not going to affect your recovery too much either. And be patient with it. So take 10 to 20% off of your total. In this case, we're going to use the case 2,000 calories a day. We're going to take 10% off. That's 200 calories off, leaving us 1,800 to eat a day. That is our starting point for our weight loss journey. Now, you could fill those calories every day with anything you want. You could eat sweets, chocolate, crisps, you could eat chicken and broccoli and rice, you could eat whatever you like. We would strongly advise that you eat a healthy, balanced diet. Now, you can lose weight if the energy you're consuming is less than the energy you're burning, regardless of the sources of that energy. The downside of that is you will probably feel like crap. It won't optimize your sleep, your recovery, your health, your training. Nothing will be optimized and you will feel pretty crappy. It's also going to be a little bit hard to stick to any diet if you're eating highly palatable, highly calorific, highly processed foods. So if you were eating 1,800 calories a day of biscuits, that could be done like that. And you're going to have, suddenly you're going to reach lunchtime and you're going to have eaten all of your daily food intake and you're going to be hungry for the rest of the day. However, if you're eating 1,800 calories a day, that's bolstered by lots of vegetables, lots of kind of lightly calorie, nutrient dense foods, you're going to feel fuller for longer. And as a result, you're not going to feel the need to crave and crash and break your diet as easily. So what we would suggest is, obviously, you eat healthily. You eat vegetables every mealtime, you drink 3 liters of water a day, and you also hit some staples in terms of your carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So what we would advise is a rule of thumb. Now, you can change this. This is not nutritional advice as far as us being nutritionists or dietitians. This is just anecdotal from the coaches and from the clients and the experience we have, and from reading what's out there in the literature at the moment. We would advise you have 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you are 150 pounds, you're going to be having 150 grams of protein a day. We would also advise you have between 0.2, but probably nearer the 0.4 grams of fat per pound of body weight for a healthy life. You know, you can go lower than that. You can certainly go higher than that. We wouldn't advise you go too much lower, because fat is quite an important factor in monitoring certain functions within the body, hormone and things like that. So I wouldn't necessarily say you would need to go any lower than 0.2, and 0.4 seems to be the sweet spot. If you have dieted before and you know how your body works and you actually prefer a higher fat diet, then you can push your fat up. But as a baseline starting, this is a kind of just a blanket first time of dieting, probably 0.4 grams is the optimum. And then whatever's left, when you've taken off your protein and taken off your fat, whatever's left from your daily intake, we would dedicate to carbohydrates. So let's use the example of a 150-pound person. You're at 1,800 calories a day. Now, protein, 1 gram of protein equates to 4 calories. 1 gram of fat equates to 9 calories. And 1 gram of carbohydrate equates to 4 calories again. So let's do the maths. You've got a 150-pound individual, so they're having 150 grams of protein. That equates to 600 calories. So 600 calories is coming from protein. If they are having 0.4 grams of fat and they weigh 150 pounds, and they're going to be having 60 grams of fat a day, and that equates to 540 calories. So straight away, we know we're having 1,140 calories of our 1,800 daily total coming from protein and fat, leaving us 660 calories left carbohydrates, which equates to 165 grams of carbs, if my math is correct. That's as simple as it needs to be. You optimize your protein, you optimize your fat, and then you leave whatever's left to your carbohydrate. Now, after you've trialed this diet for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, and you're making notes and you're assessing how you feel, how you recover, how you train, how you sleep, how your body's reacting, then you can start playing around with those numbers and manipulating it to suit your needs. You know, everyone's different. Looking at the SPC coaches, some of them prefer a very high carb diet and can tolerate an awful lot of carbohydrate throughout the day. And if they don't have that carbohydrate, they feel a little bit tired, a little bit sluggish. Me, for instance, I don't tolerate high carbohydrates very well, so I'll have a moderate to low amount. I tend to respond better on those kind of diets. Otherwise, I feel a bit sluggish, a bit bloated. It's just the way the individuals operate. But you only get to the point of knowing that by trialing a very simple approach for a prolonged period of time and sticking with it. So when you've got your breakdown, having 1,800 calories a day, 150 grams of protein, 60 grams of fats, and 165 grams of carbohydrates to make up my 1,800 calories, I'm going to be having vegetables every mealtime. I'm going to be selecting healthy protein sources at every mealtime. So in the morning, it could be eggs. Lunchtime, it could be fish, tuna, chicken. In the evening, it could be lean meats. Again, so turkey mince, low-fat beef mince, chicken, fish, tofu, whatever you want. There are obviously plenty of options that are from vegan right the way through to carnivore. So you've got an awful lot of options to choose from. Obviously, the fattier cuts of meat and the fattier vegetable sources, things like avocados, are going to carry more calories. Just be conscious of that. Snacks, nuts, fruits, protein shakes, things that are single macronutrients like protein shakes can be very useful to hit your calorie targets when you're on a diet, because sometimes the protein, carb, and fat sources will come in a full spectrum of food, which is great. But sometimes you need to just isolate one of those if you want to hit your daily total. So just bear that in mind when you're coming to having your snacks. Protein shakes and other supplements can be particularly useful when you're on a diet, when hitting specific numbers. But we would advise having 3 meals a day, full spectrum of food, vegetables, protein, and a good carbohydrate source at those meal times to spread across. Obviously, if you're training and you're on a diet, you sometimes want to optimize your intake of carbohydrates in and around your training. Now, across the day, in terms of weight loss, it won't really make any difference at all. We're looking at your total energy consumed. However, some people feel better when they have their carbohydrates 45 minutes to an hour before they train, and then a little bit after, and then again when they go to sleep in the evening to help them recover and get into that sleep state. So just take note of how you train and how you progress through these diet protocols, and then you'll be able to manipulate your intakes based on the notes you're taking that's providing you the feedback you need to assess your progress. So it's quite a simple approach to diets. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. Those are the simple things you need to do. You go online, you find a TDEE calculator. You pick the first one that comes up. You put in all the information it asks for, you click calculate, and it will kick out your daily maintenance calories. From there, decide based on your goal and the time frame you're working toward whether you want to have between 10 and 20% reduction. Take that off of those calories and then divide up what's left amongst those simple benchmarks of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, 0.4 grams of fat per pound of body weight, and the rest given over to carbohydrate. One thing we would suggest is when you are going into a diet and you're going ahead and kind of designing your program, easy tracking apps like MyFitnessPal can be very useful. So I would download MyFitnessPal, input the numbers you calculated as your set goals and targets for the duration of your diet, and use that to input the food you eat across the day. Now, some people prefer the flexibility that an app like MyFitnessPal provides, in that you can scan and go and whatever you eat, as long as you track it, you can make up your daily totals. That's great. If that works for you, fantastic. Some people, unfortunately, that doesn't do well because it tends to allow them to have the certain foods that trigger binges, and it doesn't really solve the bad habits they built up. They've gotten to the state where they need to then look at losing weight. So in those instances, build a healthy diet on MyFitnessPal for a hypothetical day, and then just replicate that if you feel that sticking to the same thing is going to create a routine that you're going to adhere to as closely as possible. Because when it comes to a diet, patience and adherence are the two main important things, okay? If you're not going to be patient and you're not going to adhere to the diet, you're going to go 1,800 one day, 2,200 the next day, 3,000 the weekend, then 1,800 for 4 days in a row, that you're not going to get the results you want. So make sure the goal you pick, the timeline you pick, are not really important enough for you to prioritize this over eating rubbish, but are also realistic for you to hit within that time frame. So if you're looking at losing 5 stone in 12 weeks, it's probably not going to happen. It's going to be nearly 12 to 40 weeks is your time frame you want to be working to. So just be realistic about that. If it took you 10 years to get to this position, you're not going to have an overnight success. It's going to take you a while. But the motivation for these things comes during the process of the journey, because what you'll tend to find when you're 4 or 5 weeks in, you'll start to have better sleep, start to have more energy, better recovery, better training sessions. People will start noticing your changes in your physique as you lose weight. Those things do add up to being a fairly big motivator and keeping people on the straight and narrow when it comes to these things. So just bear that in mind. Obviously, the SPC team are here to help support you during your process. You're either going to be coming to personal training or group training, which is also very important. But if you're not coming to SPC and you are going to a gym, try and find little communities within that gym, whether it's in class or on the weightlift floor, that are going to support your goals. So surround yourself with people who are either trying to achieve the same thing, have been there and done that, or who are very proud of the things you're doing. Because if you're not surrounded by people who are supporting you, again, your environment needs to be set up to support your goals. If it's not set up to support your goals and you're not surrounded by people who are supporting you, then you're going to find this even harder to do. Now we're approaching Christmas, which is always usually an indulgent time of year. It would be better, wouldn't it, to approach Christmas and then enjoy it with a little bit more flexibility, because you have put in such hard work between now and then, and you've lost a bit of weight, or you put on a bit of muscle, whatever it may be, but you've dedicated yourself to a healthy eating regime, a training regime, and you're now in a position where you can enjoy yourself, knowing that it's not going to cripple your progress. It's not going to spiral you out of control. And that would be the advice that SPC suggests. Like I say, we're not dietitians, we're not nutritionists. Nutrition doesn't have to be complicated. People overcomplicate it all the time. It's very, very simple. There are some core fundamental basics that we repeat time and time again across our blogs, our podcasts, our social media, with our clients, with our sessions. It doesn't have to be hard, but getting started can sometimes be the most difficult part. So get these things set up, work out what you need to eat across the day, work out how you're going to split that up, prep your food prior to the day you're going to be training. So if it's on a Sunday, prep your food for as many days in a row as you can, because when you're coming home hungry and tired at the end of the day, and you're eating in a deficit, which means you're eating less food than you need, which means you're going to be hungry and craving things at times. That is a very hard thing to resist. It's going to be a hell of a lot easier to stick to a plan if there's something in the fridge when you get back. So if you're not doing your food prep and you know it's going to be a challenge, then you're not setting yourself up for success. So prep your food in advance, plan out your weeks, make sure that you've got all the pinch points addressed, and that's going to give you the best possible chance of succeeding where you may have failed in the past. Now, like I said, SPC, they're always at the end of a phone, end of an email. Get in contact with us, go online, speak to us on the phone in your sessions if you want any more help or support. I promise you, start with those basics, stick to it to 4 to 5, 6 weeks, and you will see a dramatic change in your lifestyle, in your body weight, and this will hopefully lend itself to changing any behaviors that you have that aren't optimizing your health. Behavioral changes are probably some of the most important things you can take from a diet. If you're changing the way you live your life, and as a result, you're then optimizing and prioritizing your health, then that's the best outcome you can get from a diet plan. The weight loss will come, doesn't matter. If you stick to it, losing weight is easy. You've just got to change certain things in your life that have led you to this point. The one thing that we would probably also suggest you do when it comes to changing behaviors and comes to changing diets and things like, don't look at a diet like a punishment. A lot of people look at it and think, right, I'm going to punish myself for 12 weeks. And at the end of 12 weeks, I'm going to get back on my normal lifestyle. Diets will only work in the long run is if you approach them with an optimistic, positive outlook. I'm eating healthy food. I'm feeling great. I've got lots of energy. I'm looking better. And I'm probably going to be healthier for years to come than I was previously. That's something to aspire to. It's not a penance. You shouldn't be looking at this like a negative. Okay. So change the way you think about it. Stick to those core fundamental principles. Get 6 weeks in before you look at optimizing or changing anything. Obviously, make notes week to week on a few key areas. So things like recovery, sleep, training, diet, weight, obviously, and see how you get on. And hopefully, come Christmas time this year, you'll be in a much better position than you are now.